Adam, let's jump into a untimely review. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, we are not influential enough nor rich enough to get games ahead of time or get them sent to us.
I should
So
know.
we
I got
review-
this game for free.
You're ruining my segment, Adam. I'm trying to get a point across, and you're ruining it. Let me have this moment to do the intro. Normally, ladies and gentlemen, we review games on our own dime, on our own time. And so we bring games to you as we finish them, when we finish them, and they become untimely reviews. This week, Adam, what do you have for us?
This totally free game that I just didn't speak about, a couple of seconds ago. Sorry about that, Kaylan. I did play Final Fantasy VII Remake, specifically Integrate on the PS5. I did get it free on PlayStation Plus, but I wanted to wait. Because my brain was like, I don't want to play this at 30 frames. No, I'm not going to play at some plebeian resolution. So I waited. I was going to wait for a price, and then my buddy who I console share with was like, so I just bought the upgrade. I guess I'm playing it now then. So I have. So about 40 hours later.
Adam, how do you want to do this? I'm going to throw it two ways to you. We can do like our standard untimely review. Or if you want a challenge, you can try and convince me, someone who doesn't play JRPGs, to play Final Fantasy VII. Which do you choose?
I can do both because it's really not a JRPG.
Okay, let's go. Take me for a ride.
If you're looking at a JRPG as the old turn-based stuff, the one that you have to sit there and grind forever, you ain't gotta do shit. You can turn it on easy and just have fun with the action combat that it has, like very Kingdom Hearts-ish, and have a pretty good time with it. And most of it, story, like if you're into story, you're gonna get plenty of that. If there's one thing I'll take away from this game, it's that they used every moment they had to make everything matter. There is very little in the game that I can criticize for being a bad decision or this character is boring. It really doesn't happen much. So it's a Japanese RPG, but as what we consider a JRPG like the original 7 or say a recent Dragon Quest or Persona games, it's not. It is an action game that just happens to be a little bit longer than most action games. That's really it. That's how I can sell you on at least playing it. And otherwise, I can tell you should play it because it's probably the best game I've played so far this year. So there's that.
Okay.
So otherwise, 40 hours-ish, something like that, because I basically completed as much as I could without going out of my way to trophy hunt. I went into this game liking the demo, but still lowering my expectations, because personally, 7 is not one that I'm very fond of, at least the original. I understand that is not a popular opinion. Yeah, and I don't really care. I understand.
That's why you're the radical one.
I understand a lot of people's opinions with 7, and I think it's because a lot of people grew up with 7 being their first foray into the series. But similarly, I played 4 and 6 first, and I don't even look at either of those as my favorites. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm just the one that, can open their mind to later games. I don't know, I guess. But I really didn't care much for 7. I thought the characters were mostly not that interesting. The atmosphere was cool. Like, Midgar in the first, disc of the original game is awesome, and then when you get outside the world, it's pretty cool. There's a lot to like. I mean, the music's really good. The villains, I don't think were very good. I think Sephiroth is one of the most overrated villains in Final Fantasy, period.
Sorry, so just to confirm, are you talking about Final Fantasy, the remake villain?
No. I'm still talking about the original at this point. Most of about the original that everybody talks about endlessly is oh man, the Cloud was such a cool hero. I'm like, Cloud is boring as shit. Sephiroth is the most badass villain. I'm like, he has a cool scene where he walks through fire. That's what everybody remembers. He stabbed a girl. Everybody thought it was cool back then. But he really isn't that dastardly. In fact, he's a pretty boy that just happens to do a couple of bad things at some point in the game. He's nothing special. When you compare it to villains like Golbez, Kefka, and other villains in the Final Fantasy universe, he's got nothing on these villains. So it was not that great. So I already went into the remake being all right, this thing has everything possible to at least make me like this game. Because I don't hate 7 before this game, but I didn't particularly enjoy it. And then, son of a bitch, within about an hour, I said, oh crap, I'm starting to really like this world. And then about 5 hours in, I'm like, son of a bitch, I really love this world. And then the game ended, and I went, I think this might be my second favorite game, period.
Oh, even not just Final Fantasy, this is your second favorite game.
I've moved things around. I've recently replayed 10 a bit because I had the remaster and I really wanted to go back and mess with it.
Mhm.
It hasn't aged very well. And I think going back and looking at the story, I have a lot more to criticize with it then because I'm 33 now and not 16 when I played it, where I forgave everything because I just saw pretty girls and I was a horny teenager.
Yeah.
So if I was honestly like telling you my top three, 10 is now my third favorite. 6 is still number one. And I think the 7 remake is actually my second favorite game right now. And this is
Okay.
recency bias, so who knows what this feels like later. But as it stands right now, I absolutely adored this game. So, like I said earlier, the story is incredible. And they've done changes here and there. And I've seen a lot of people upset about it. And I'm not going to spoil any of them. But the remake, at least to the point that it ends, which, as most people predicted, is true, it pretty much ends with you leaving Midgard. So it's like the end of Disc 1. The journey from the beginning to end of Disc 1 in the story of the original is not the same as what the remake does. They make significant changes, some of them big, some of them small, and they add a bunch of stuff in between because, well, you can't really fit a 10-hour game in 40, 50 hours, so you gotta figure out a couple of new things to do. And I think...
But that...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So you're saying like they're obviously expanding it, but it doesn't feel like fluff.
No,
they've added.
No. In fact, I feel like it made me love so many more of the characters.
Okay.
So like Cloud, I love to death now. Tifa, who I was okay on, I really like. Aerith, who I actually didn't like a lot and was not that upset when she died in the original. I went, okay, cool. That's one less person in my party, and I love her to death now in this game. The only person in the main cast.
Bad news for you.
What's that?
It's not going to go well for her.
I mean.
Don't get attached, Adam. Don't get attached.
We honestly don't, like, here's the thing. I have no idea what they're going to do for the rest of the game because they've definitely made some changes that made it seem like it's going to be different. How different? We don't know, but it's going to be different. And like I said, I'm not going to spoil anything, but like they made it pretty clear that this isn't going to be script by script by script how the game runs. It's not going to go that way. The only character I still don't like a whole lot is Barrett, but that's also because Barrett's intentionally a bit of a douchebag in that game because, well, he's a pissed off environmentalist. I would be too. He's an environmental terrorist. He should be pretty pissed off. So I guess he's doing his job. But like, I didn't end up loving him as much as like I would have liked to compared to the other characters. But like, the biggest change of all is a lot of the minor characters suddenly aren't minor anymore. In the original game, Biggs, Jesse, and Wedge, who all pass away in the original game, they don't really get any time to get into your thoughts. By the end of like the point where you get to where they would be killed off, like I'm like, man, I hate the fact that I'm about to lose these three again. I hate it because now I love Jessie to death. I know a lot of people seem to hate her because she's like the overly flirtatious trope, but like it really does offset a lot of the darkness that the game starts off with, so I like that. And then Biggs and Wedge is like, Biggs is basically Balthier from 12 all over again. He's just the cocky, like,
course,
you know, he's basically like the Han Solo of the group. And then you got Wedge, who is just the jolly, like, fat, happy-go-lucky guy that has a lot of cats. Which, how do you hate a guy who likes cats? Come on. But like, even new characters they bring up, there's a few like new ones they bring into this fold that kind of make things decent. And every area that you grew up with, if you played the original game, seeing it fleshed out in full 4K, hearing the new orchestrated versions of all these songs, and then some of them like done differently, like some of the weird jukebox music, because they have these jukebox machines littered around the map, and you can get these vinyl records to put in them. And they have these weird things, like there's a hip-hop version of the Chocobo theme, there's a jazz version of Tifa's theme, like there's cool stuff like that lets you listen to some of the songs you're used to hearing, but almost like you're going on YouTube and listening to cover videos. Like it's pretty cool how they deal with that stuff. So they're already done everything they do to make me love the world, love the characters, and love the story because, like I said, I don't really feel like there's a dead point in the story. There's always something keeping you going. And then you take the battle system, which honestly is similar to what 15 did, except putting a bit more of an ATB spin on it. Like you can pause the fight to pick abilities or skills to at least like give yourself a second to catch your breath, especially if you're playing on harder difficulties. I didn't because I like fun. I don't really care about challenge. But like at any point in the game when you're wailing on somebody and you're like, oh shit, I need a second to kind of like heal people and maybe plan what my next thing is, hit the X button or the cross button, depending on what button you like to call it in PlayStation. I know we're supposed to call it cross, but I don't care.
We are civilized gentlemen here. It is the cross button.
It's
Xbox has an X button. We have a cross button.
So you hit the X button.
I hate you so much.
And you get a chance, like, and you see, especially when you're in like mid animation, sometimes it's really cool to see like the super slowed down like version of you like just wailing that Buster Sword on somebody. It's really fun to watch. And I do like the fact too that you can switch between characters too, so you don't have to just play as Cloud. If you want to just go around with Barrett and just constantly gun shit, do it. You want to be Aerith and just sit in the background and just wave your staff like you're actually important? You could do that. Actually, she's actually pretty good. It's not that bad. But like,
that's good though. I like that.
They don't give you like, they don't force anything on you. You can do whatever the hell you want with it. And the materia system really is unchanged. It's really just the kinds of materia you have. Like some things are more stat based, some things are more giving you extra abilities. Like one of Cloud's very useful ones at the beginning is something that whenever you dodge, it does a special attack. And that thing really rakes in the early points of the game. It is so helpful because it's a pretty heavy AoE attack. Like, it can take care of a lot of enemies, so you can get a lot done in the early stages. So, all of that combined, by the time that I got to the end of the game, I went, man, I'm really pissed that I finished playing this, because now I really want to play the second part. My plan was to wait till it was all done. And now I hate myself for not waiting. Although I am playing the Yuffie DLC as we speak, so I at least getting some more of a fix before I have nothing to do for probably the next 2 to 3 years, because I don't think we're seeing part 2 anytime soon.
I was going to say, it's going to be a while. Quickly, I know we'll probably have a second segment for the DLC, but thumbs up, thumbs down. Is it more of what you love, or is it different?
What, the DLC?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm especially love Yuffie, so I've only put like maybe 30 minutes to an hour into it. Within like 10 seconds, as soon as she started talking and being her jovial, like goofy self, I'm like, I love this. I'm already in. I don't even care what the hell the story is at this point. You have my attention. I mean, It's Yuffie in a Moogle cloak. What am I supposed to be angry about?
Those words mean nothing to me, sir.
See, but to the people that I'm trying to sell it to, because I don't care what you think, Mr. I like Uncharted. I'm just kidding.
It's not even the one that like we go after. You usually go after Last of Us with me. But once again, this is coming full circle to our conversation. Is I'm not picking it up. The people who know, they know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, that's the fun. I'm just signaling to my crew, you know.
Oh yeah, you're speaking to your people. Go ahead. So my question to you, as someone who's skeptical but interested in this game, does it leave at a spot? Like, does it feel like it's a concise game in and of itself? That like, if I were to just play this, do I feel closure and that like the story's wrapped up, or is it left that like, nope, you definitely need to play the second one to get the story? Like, is it closed up? Did they do it in a way that it feels like its own little story, or does it feel like it's left on a cliffhanger?
I didn't feel like it was a cliffhanger. I felt like it was okay, this is where the sequel starts.
Okay.
So like, without spoiling anything, realistically, the ending is just you specifically saying to yourself, all right, let's go and see where this takes us.
Okay.
There's not like a sudden moment that makes me go, oh, no. No, it's literally whatever you did at that point has some sort of a finite ending, and it leads into like, okay, we don't know what's going to happen as soon as we take this leap of faith, but whatever it is, we're going to be ready for it, and we're going to do it together.
So it feels more like
I mean, if you know sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. If you know the 7 stories so far, like, again, it's disc 1. They made some changes, they've added some stuff in, but it still ends at disc 1. So the only thing that's different between disc 1, the original, and this game is that they end it a little more finite, whereas the disc 1 transition is just basically, you just finished this mission, put in disc 2. By the time you get to the end of this part, there's somewhat of an ending that's like, okay, that was satisfying.
Okay. And my last question is, like, you kind of started off saying like this isn't your typical JRPG. How's like the acting and the dialogue and like the script? Is it still that over the top JRPG-ness, or is it like a little bit more serious in terms of how they do it?
It's a bit of both. I mean, there are some people that really, really don't like that they definitely got cues from anime in terms of like being very like emotive with sounds. Like you'll hear a lot of or like you'll hear a lot of that. But like the actual voice acting, when it's time to get serious, they get serious. When it's time to be really funny, they get really funny. There are some moments in there that I had the biggest shit-eating grin on my face.
Okay.
And I mean, like they do it pretty well. Like everything's pretty meaningful. And it's not to the point that like I would say it's overly Japanese. I think the English dialogue does enough to like kind of set it back a little bit. I wish I'd gone back and watched some of the scenes in Japanese just to get a sense of what the difference was. But like I didn't feel a sense of like it's too over the top. I felt like there are some characters that do lean that way, but that's kind of their character.
Okay. Yeah, because that's like it's a silly thing I know to kind of like nitpick, but that's always been one of the things that like the over the topness of it is always something that's just kind of been not necessarily like the detriment or like the reason I don't play, but it's always been one of those parts that is just takes me out a little bit. It's like the cartoonish nature sometimes of how it's presented. But
I mean, if you're looking at a game like say, like I recently started playing a game called Atelier Ryza, which is a much more anime game, like very anime game, where like the characters are way over the top, peppy, extremely high pitched, and all that. It's not that. You still have a very deep voice for a lot of characters. There's still a lot of seriousness to them. There are a couple of characters here and there that are over the top. Like, if anybody knows Final Fantasy VII, there's Don Corneo. I think we just lost Kaylan. That'll be interesting. But there he is. He's
still
back.
Here.
It really isn't like every character is an anime like version of themselves. There's the few that do, like Don Corneo, like I said in Final Fantasy VII Original, is a bit of an over the top, oh ho 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 kind of villain, and he still is that. But they do try to ground a little bit in it, that since they do have to voice act it, they can't just have a guy go up to the booth and like scream into the camera like he's going insane every 5 seconds. So at some point, like you can't have 99% Dragon Ball Z characters. You have to have a little bit of seriousness in there.
Fair enough. Awesome. Any other thoughts or opinions about Final Fantasy VII Remake? I don't know if that's it. That's it. I just wanted to confirm.
I'm just trying to think if there's anything special. No, just more along the lines of like, now that we're outside of Midgar, I wonder what they do in how they transfer between areas. Because after this point, there was the world map. You could go wherever the hell you wanted at this point, as long as you were able to reach it. Now, with the idea that, you know, it's a much bigger game, like you're not going to have an overworld anymore. So I imagine they're going to make branching paths between places. So it makes me wonder if the game's going to be a little bit more linear than it used to be. Because I mean, in this game, you can go between various parts of Midgar however you please. Like they don't let you go up to the top part of it where the actual like cities are. They mostly stick you in the slums because that's where most of the game takes place, which is a shame. That's honestly my only complaint, is that I would have liked to have more on the top side of Midgar, because that's where a lot of like the real beauty is, because that's where you get like the neon signs and you get the bigger buildings and the more industrial stuff. Whereas the slums, after about 30 hours of seeing garbage and stones all over the place, it's a little rough. But
I'm still here.
You're just having video troubles all over the wazoo today.
Yep.
But I'm more curious to see what they do now with an open world and with a lot more locations. Maybe that's why it's okay to be a little bit linear now, because you're able to go from different place to different place and have that much more different looking atmosphere and aesthetic every time, rather than it being this full circle, which I don't think you could do with a game of this size anymore. I mean, you could try, I guess, to make a Final Fantasy 15 level world map, but I don't know if that's a great idea.
Unless you did like a hub world style.
Maybe, but like
something like Metro Exodus or something. I don't know.
Maybe, but I think with the format, like it'd be really weird if they suddenly changed it and suddenly turned it into like something more akin to 15. But then again, that's what Disc 1 and then Disc 2 and 3 kind of ended up being. So I guess who knows? But
yeah,
it's right, still like, for what it is, it was a really good experience, and it's something that like I can't believe that I'm saying that I cannot wait to see what the next part of it looks like.
I'm really glad you liked it. In terms of rating, how are you going to rate it, and what are you going to rate it?
Well, if I rate it specifically in the moment, because I don't care about 10s needing to be perfect, it was a 10. Like, I absolutely adored this game, to the point, like I said, it's now easily like a top 3 Final Fantasy of all time for me. So
nice.
I mean, if I want to be a little more critical, I guess I could make it a 9.5 if I had to put the critic eye, but I don't care, so it's a 10.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, I totally get where you're coming from. I'm glad you really liked that. And it's honestly, if it's going to be a game that's going to get me into Final Fantasy, I think this is going to be the one.
Did you pick it up for free on PlayStation Plus?
I totally did.
Well, then it cost you nothing to give it a shot anyway.
Yeah, I played it once and I was very close, but it just didn't hit right at that moment. But honestly, the world and the environment and the story, like, it all sounds really interesting. So I think I'm gonna give it a shot.
And like I said, like every moment, like there's even like here's a really small example. So when you start off with Aerith later on in the game, which is another character, she's a flower girl. You end up in this different part of the slums, and you go to this orphanage, and there's this black lady who is one of their, I guess, I don't know what you would call, like one of the caretakers, teachers, something like that.
Yeah.
And she's got a tiny bit of dialogue, just talking about how things are there and dealing with all the kids. And then later on in the game, you go to this seedy part of the slums where it's like not strip clubs, but like cabaret clubs and gambling and stuff like that. And here you are seeing her in what this area is like akin to a bunny suit. They call it the honeybee inn, so they wear, you know what a bunny girl looks like.
Yeah, I'm
just
familiar.
Think of that with bees. So they're wearing like this big bee on their ass. And you see her in that uniform, and it's more just being like, I always wanted to be a dancer. Like, even just a little thing like that, of this random NPC that you saw for 10 seconds getting that extra tiny bit of backstory of just her dreams to be a dancer. And that's just like a nobody. I don't even know, I can't remember her name, but like, it's just the fact that they're willing to put a little bit more attention to detail on some people than they normally would in most of these games. And I think that's what I appreciate. It's because every little thing matters. Like, you're not like getting random dialogue and you don't have to think about it 2 minutes later.
Mm-hmm.